I am unmuting the two of us so that people can hear. And hopefully there's no audio disparity that crept up after last time I can talk.
Yeah. I just saw a little bit of the one you did with James with Kingdom Hearts, and it was kind of sound similar to what people were describing in terms of the James was a little low, so there's some sort of bias.
Yeah, let me check, like, can I raise you? Let's raise you up 0.7 decibels above 0. So now should actively be making you even louder.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. I'm just logging into the stream. I've got
Yep,
it, but it is muted, so I'm not gonna get.
that's good. Yes. Um, no, I do want chat up. I don't want this OBS window up. Okay, there we go. All right. Um, I went ahead and filled. This is not me hopeful of how far we're gonna get today, but I did just sit down over the weekend and create the list all the way through 2003. And let me tell you, when we get to um, late 90s, we're in for a lot of fun because
Yeah.
the thing I learned creating this list is NOE, after consoles are out, like we're firmly in the we have consoles to support, um, they swing wildly back and forth like a pendulum between we're holding things back and choosing to release nothing this year, and then we have 2 years worth of stuff to release at once.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I mean, I can vaguely remember with the luxury of sort of importing things. Just every now and again, there'd be a review in a magazine, which we probably would have already reviewed the game when
Yeah.
it was, out in an NTSC territory, but it was just so distended. It was so much after. You could kind of like, really? That's this is
Yes.
when they're finally getting it officially, but yeah.
Um, and a very large number of games, many Europe only, that are titled soccer. So I think Nintendo of Europe just does not care. I think maybe beyond Pocket Football Club, they don't care about saying football instead of soccer.
Yeah. Which was in Japan. It was like the calcio bit, which
Yeah.
is a reference to Italian,
Yep.
how football is referred to, that calcio. But with,
No, makes no
yeah,
sense. Um, so let's kind of get started here with some 1988. First on the list, we've got NES Ice Hockey.
yeah. So I not really had the chance to play around with this a great deal. So yeah, I'm kind of shooting in the dark a bit with this one. I think it's got you know a sort of fairly respectable kind of reputation. But again, I assume
Mm-hmm.
it's was a little bit longer in the tooth coming out in
Yes.
'88 than it was originally.
Yes, this is
Um,
Black Box, I believe. So this is as a reminder for what came out the year before, because there's been a week in between episodes. This is a year after Kid Icarus, The Legend of Zelda, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, Super Mario Brothers.
yeah, so we've got some of that kind of lack of some weird sequencing, I guess, here in
Mm-hmm.
terms of we're going to get some of the earlier games coming out after sort of some
Yep.
pretty like big hitters. Yeah, I think I'll go with a 6 on this one, but
Okay.
with full deference to the fact it's not based on a great deal.
Rad Racer.
Yeah, again, I know this more by that. So if this is the Square game, is it?
I
Am I
believe so,
correct?
yes. Yep.
Yeah. So and it was just a case of them bringing that over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did really though in terms of the quality or how much I'd enjoy it. I'm very very vague on this one.
I believe this is Sakaguchi. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's tough. It's tough for me to kind of to give this a very definite score. So I might go with a 5 on this one.
Okay. RC Pro-Am.
Yeah, a little bit more knowledge of this in terms of kind of somewhat predictably, it probably came up more in magazines.
Yep.
This was another rare game, so it kind of had a reasonable kind of reputation and just prominence based on that fact over here in magazines. But I didn't play it back then. I did play its sort of successor. It was Cobra Triangle, which
Yep.
I imagine we'll get to. Somewhere down the line, but that was like one of the last games that we really had before our NES broke down.
Mm.
So and it was similar in terms of it was like isometric and all, but they kind of instead of just being kind of this radio control racing scenario, it was like you had like speedboats and like various different scenarios, sea monsters. Like
Yep.
it was a kind of a weird hybrid, that one, but. With Darcy Pro-Am kind of working backwards and stuff, I think I'm going to give this a 6 as well.
Okay. What about Metroid?
Original Metroid, yeah, did not play it back at the time. Again, it was something that kind of read about a fair bit in with the equivalent of the Fun Club newsletter. I can't remember what that was with. Maybe it's just Club Nintendo newsletter or something. And it interested me and all that, but did not. Again, the time with the NES was brief. So, based on playing it on various kinds of emulated scenarios down the years. I think one of the first times I put really, it wasn't the most time in, but it was some significant amount of time, was actually when it was an unlockable in Metroid Prime. I think there was, it may have been to do with connecting it with Fusion or something, like
Yes.
because there was the Fusion suit. I remember that, like you could actually have Samus appear in the Fusion costume when you would do, it'd be like if you saw her in an elevator.
Connectivity, folks.
Yeah, this was also part of that, I believe. So that was like obviously many years after it originally came out, but then subsequently I've had chances over the years a number of times to kind of revisit it. Most recently playing the Famicom Disk System version through NSO. Because you sort of get the Japanese app, you can actually hear that, and obviously it's not massively different other than I mean you wouldn't really have to worry about passwords anyway with playing it emulated and stuff, but you do get the different intro music, you get the different sound effects, which is mostly what the extra channel is used for, and a few other things. I think it's obviously it's tough to disentangle, kind of, especially when you play after Super Metroid, what it was achieving at the time, and kind of how enjoyable it is today. And I can't fully disentangle those things. I think I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay.
Which is that I think it was a very significant kind of game at the time, but even then it had some pretty obvious drawbacks and kind of things where even then I think it could have been executed better, but still it's a kind of a landmark game.
Makes sense. Gumshoe.
Yeah, so this, as I said, we covered in Hogan's Alley last week. The Zapper basically ceased to be a thing for us once after Hogan's Alley. But like the Gumshoe was the one when I saw again that buyer's guide, like sort of cataloguing a lot of games that have come out for NES. Of the other Zapper games, like that seemed like kind of interesting because it is like a side-scrolling game, but you interact with it by shooting at the screen, so it's quite different from just the other games were just various riffs on the shooting gallery scenario, whereas this at least was somewhat kind of different, I guess, in some ways, kind of a precursor to some of the kind of scenarios you might have had on Wii, where you kind of interacted with things with a pointer.
Mhm.
Although that would generally be in like a secondary kind of scenario. But I've never had the impression it was terribly great as a game. It's kind of a novelty of another thing to do with the Zapper that wasn't just another shooting gallery, but not amazing on its own terms. So I'm going to go with a 5.
Thank you. Uh, Sorry, folks watching, by the way, for that jingle. Thought I turned that off. Athletic World.
Well, okay, this one we're gonna have to
Google?
cover what on earth Athletic World is. Yeah, so let's see.
Yeah.
So let's have a look.
It's
at
a
this.
power pad game.
The power pad. Yeah. So because what is it? When I think of the power pad, it's usually something to do with some auction that's happened and stadium events and stuff in the US. But is this, that kind of by another name or yeah?
No,
Like,
yeah, this is not. I mean, generally, this is a run on the power pad, jump. It's like a track and field type experience.
right. Yeah. I mean, I did have one of the track and field games on NES, but that we just orthodox, kind of button mashing stuff. I guess with this, it's same sort of thing, but trying to tie it into actually being physically active in some way. Again, not a lot of frame of reference other than just a kind of was not thrilled with track and field, those button mashing kind of thing. I guess it's one of these things. One of the problems of being a child is that it's like, oh, track and field, it's all these different kinds of events. Like, oh, that's interesting. That's exciting. You see the Olympics on TV or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and it's like it's all these different kinds of things in one game. Like and then of course, it all boils down to doing the same thing in a different way. It's just some kind of different button mashing is
Yep.
not all the events, but so many of them. And I think as a kid, that sort of disappointment bites like harder than it should because what how
Yes.
different do you expect it to be? But yeah, so maybe being a little harsh in that sense, but I'll go with the 5 on this
Okay.
one. I think
Safe Buster for the Game and Watch.
Safe Buster. Okay, so I mean, the first thing I need to know about Safe Buster is, do we have a character name to compete in the pantheon?
Oh, we might.
With Ziggy the Maze Man, I think.
And John Solver, yes.
John Sol.
Um,
that is so like 90s action movie or the 80s, the late 80s.
yes.
90s, yeah. That could easily be a Stallone or a
No
Schwarzenegger.
character names, no. In the game, the player controls a man who must catch bombs. By pressing left or right buttons, you can move the man in the direction of the pressed button. After catching them, he must move to the edges of the screen to dispose the bombs. However, he can only hold up to 3 bombs. That's the game.
There's a lot of bombs in Game & Watch games, isn't there? Like, I
Yes.
feel like it's this peculiar kind of preoccupation. But I know also that this is one that I would not have had any kind of brush with through the Game & Watch gallery games that I've played, because as we covered last time, I've not played the GBA one, and it is present on that, but albeit not in a kind of remake scenario. So this is getting the 4, basically.
Okay. And then we have Gold Cliff, which is the last one before the Game Boy released anywhere in the world. So this is the last one Nintendo made before the Game Boy.
It's kind of a landmark in that sense, but is there anything particularly?
The player controls an archaeologist and scales disappearing platforms in the ancient ruins. In every set of 4 levels, the first 3 requires the players to grab a key on the right side of the ruins and take the key to the top left to progress. On the 4th level, the player must grab a sword on the left side and take it to the top. At the top of the ruins, the enemy will be moving. To defeat it, the player must press up on the D-pad to stab the enemy with timing. Each level is timed, and when the timer hits 30, crabs begin to appear and will result in a miss if they touch the player. That's it.
See, with it being the double screen and all that kind of, it actually does seem a little more kind of interesting than some.
You've got some level of involvement there.
I think we'll go with a 5 on that one.
Okay. That is an even 5.5 for the year. Okay. 1989. There are only 3 games that Europe put out.
This is the thing. I mean, it's
Or 2, actually.
It's because the brief time that we had NES and we did play, it was dominated by Konami games.
Yes.
That's so much of what we played. There was Gradius, Castlevania, Track and Field, as I mentioned, Goonies 2, all this stuff. But and of course there were significant Nintendo games that we could have gone back to, that had already come out that we didn't, or did get round to, but. You kind of see in some ways because it's just like Nintendo kind of just released the stuff up front and then pieced out.
Yeah. So 1989, there are 2, because one of them is a North American release of a Game & Watch. So there's actually 2. 1, Super Mario Brothers USA.
Yeah, again, did not play this back in the day, although this was as you'd kind of imagine. Very much analogous to what happened in America. It got a big push through the promotional stuff and all that, and so it's kind of something that always looked interesting. Although kind of the from outside the kind of party press operation, the kind of reputation was, it's so much easier than the original. So you'll go through it too quickly or whatever. You were always looking in those days, myself and my brother as kids, wanting something that we knew you couldn't ask for that many games.
What's gonna last?
Birthdays, Christmas, maybe the odd one in between. So it's like, okay, so that did probably play a role in why we didn't get it. Of course, I've gone back to it a few different times. I've played through it in the Super Mario All-Stars version.
Oh, we'll get there.
The Super Mario Advance.
Oh, we'll get there.
and its original incarnation as well. So I like this, even though it's there's some things about it that entirely work, and there's some repetitiousness, as you might imagine, in those days. But I'll go with an 8 on this one.
Okay. Anticipation.
Is this a game, like a game show or something? Is it a board game?
It is a board game. It is developed by Rare.
Yes, of course. We've covered their many, pinball tables and all sort of PC games, all these weird things that they brought into NES.
It does not. I do not believe it is actually based on anything. It is basically combining Pictionary and Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it sounds like the kind of thing theoretically could be fun years later in a kind of Jackbox type scenario, but like back then on NES, I've got to think this was not much fun.
Does not look much fun. Although this cover art, which is just let's count them, 8 people with 2 of them are holding controllers. All of them are having the best time you've ever had in your entire life while wearing the most 1989 costuming and hairstyles you can imagine.
Wow, that is something. I don't know whether to mark it up or down for that, to be honest.
That box art is incredible. It is just a photograph.
It is, but party fun for all ages, even though they all look pretty close together in age.
They sure do.
I've got to say, it's not the most diverse group.
Nope.
Not based on a lot, but go with the instincts here. I'm gonna say a 3.
Okay, and then the Zelda Game & Watch.
Yeah, so I don't know a great deal about it, other than that it's not on the Zelda Game & Watch that's coming out next month.
Here's the fucking problem, and the reason why that sucks. This is the best Game & Watch.
So I guess this is a case of them. Is this kind of a case of actually? It feels like there's been years of Game and Watches building up to this, and it's kind of
Yeah,
relatively
kind of.
late.
Like it is like it's obviously with Game and Watch limitations. Like there's nothing getting around the fact that this is still an LCD screen game, but like it has depth to its gameplay in a way that most Game and Watches do not. I'm trying to find on the same source that gave the um, descriptions of the other. No, it's just not coming up. Yeah, like there's a lot of like gameplay and like the combat is like mostly represented and like you're kind of exploring. It's a two screen. It's got multiple colors. Like it is.
No, it's a kind of one of these things where it's quite bold to try and
And adapt it for portable. And what do we have at the time? Game and Watch.
No, exactly. But when you think of this as Zelda in '86 in Japan being on Famicom Disk System, it was relatively kind of complex
Yeah.
for a console game, and then it's like let's take our most one of our most kind of advanced console games and adapt it into this kind of format. It's an idea that certainly presumably could have gone horribly wrong, but seemingly it didn't. So
Yep.
as I again with all limitations acknowledged, I think perhaps a 7 for this one. Then
Sounds good. 1990. Tetris NES. Tetris Game Boy will be later.
Okay, so
We have a lot to talk about in 1990 for Europe because this is when the Game Boy came out.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was, I do remember the Game Boy launching, and sort of being interested, but because it didn't come out until 1990, I think it was basically that was kind of in the period of time where it was like, okay, Super Famicom is coming, and this,
Mm-hmm.
my brother was dead set on that is going to be the next thing we get. So there will not be Game Boy. This is how it's going to be. So, like I say, I do remember kind of seeing it and all the advertising in the magazines and stuff. But yeah, it was, I guess, still a fair bit. When in '90 did it actually arrive?
I believe May. Let me check. Nintendo uh, Game Boy. The Game Boy released in Europe on September 20th, 1990, which is one full calendar year after North America.
Yeah, quite a lot considering, there's no kind of like TV standards
Yeah.
issue there. Like,
April or Japan to North America was 5 months, and then it was 12 months from North America to Europe.
no, I mean it's that is significant, but I guess especially in those days and distributing across the
Mm-hmm.
continent wasn't that easy and all this kind of stuff is not terribly surprising. But yeah, it's just when you are that young, like a matter of months can feel like an eternity. But the 6 week school holiday used to be like almost long enough for me to forget about school when I was very small.
Yes, and then you hear about this thing with English language media for released games, and you can't even get it locally for 12 months.
Yeah, this is this sort of environment is I guess was another contributor to how the idea of getting the Japanese Super
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo really is just these sorts of delays. But Tetris NES, I've not played the NES version, so I know it's like
It's the
relative.
competitive version.
Yeah, that's the big kind of difference, and Yeah, I've not played any kind of multiplayer Tetris that I can think of. Like, so how much fun that would be, I really,
You haven't
I
played
don't
Tetris
know.
99?
Not a lot, no. I tried
Okay.
it once, but that, and I was thinking of, like to get, get
Fair.
someone in the same room. But yeah, which, yeah, I mean, there haven't been a lot of that going on
No.
for a few years, 2 years now. But yeah, in terms of, yeah, just playing Tetris single player, by myself, I certainly enjoy the game quite a lot. So I think, I think it's generally, regarded as a
Yeah.
pretty fine version. So I'll go with 8 on that one.
Okay. Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link.
Yeah, didn't play this originally. Did it for first time played it really extensively was when we did a retroactive on it. It was one of the relatively early retroactives. I can't remember exactly how far into the process it was.
Oh, do you
We
want me to
did
find it and tell you how old you are?
the... Yeah, I think it would have been either in '09 or 10 would be my recollection of it. But you used to burn through them a fair bit quicker in those days, because it was just kind of like, oh, all these games have come out on Virtual Console in the past like 2 years, so all
Uh,
this stuff is just there to do.
Episode numbers 148 and 149.
Yeah, so it's pretty. Last week when we was doing the Little King Story one, we were talking about when Little King Story originally came up, which was during the Super Ghouls and Ghosts retroactive. So I believe it would have been the one after that, Zelda 2, after, because
Yep,
that was
it
a
went Secret of Mana, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Zelda 2, Ninja Spirit.
Yep. So yeah, that's my main experience with the game. Again, I've kind of come back to it. That was, I think, PAL Virtual Console that I had to play that on basically
Jesus.
because yeah, I had the Japanese Wii by then, but I got with, like the text.
Yep.
I could have gone for the Japanese version and maybe just like consulted a guide or something. But the PAL one seemed like I guess I think it was anyway. It's long
See,
ago.
you got the authentic 50 hertz experience.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there was weirdness with those virtual console games in that some were more corrected than others, But I
Mm,
think generally the NES games were not very corrected. Like in most cases, I think maybe Super Mario Brothers was speed corrected, but there were not many NES games had compensations unless they were ones that maybe had compensations originally, but
right.
that in itself was uncommon. So, yeah. Anyway, with Zelda 2, it's back in this sort of era of where a sequel was quite often like radically different.
Yes. The
And
NES
this is
era of, wait, what the fuck is your game number 2? Oh, good, your game number 3 is back to game number 1. That's just the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
generation.
The Castlevania kind of went
Yep.
on a similar journey and all that. So, but coming to Zelda 2 kind of back in '09, and then I haven't really played it extensively but since, but just dabbled. But I kind of I quite like even though obviously it's got some drawbacks, but I quite like the kind of combat and stuff. I just wish his sword had better range. It's kind of a little bit comical how short it is at times, and it just I feel like not only you could say it's easier, but I think it would just play better if you had a little bit more range in that way. But the rhythm of it and kind of being a little bit reminiscent of stuff like a Castlevania is something that I quite like. Obviously, the RPG style stuff, the leveling is a bit odd. Like it's especially coming back to it later. Like it's yeah, not something that's that easy to get behind. But I'd say yeah, I like it, but not sort of unreservedly so. So I go with a 7 on that one. Nope.
Ah, I'm sorry, I was muted. That is why I was just speaking into the void. I apologize for that. To the Earth.
To the Earth. Okay, so let's yeah, that's not. And this is one of the features of this that's gonna kind of probably go all the way up to the Wii era and probably through it. But like some of these things that they did, I really were not going to be very aware of. So let's have a look at this. Oh, a light gun game. Yeah. So this presumably is one that I was not so familiar with. Certainly like Gumshoe and all that kind of stuff. But with this one, I guess, is this something they would have published in America as well?
This was published in America, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't. It seems a little bit odd that it didn't seem to get as much coverage, but maybe it was just because it so completely moved on from Zappa stuff at that point, and it was just I got tuned out, or yeah.
Honestly.
So, oh, it says the player receives a congratulation message from Nestor.
Oh no!
I wouldn't have had any idea who Nestor was.
No, of course not.
Nowadays, he of funky bowling fame.
Except spoilers. The Virtual Boy never released in Europe, so you got spared a lot of like 2 rankings.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Yeah, it didn't. It did. It did not. So that is one of the things about those delays back in those days, I guess, is like you could just sort of sit back if you had doubts or about whether something was actually going to be a hit. You could.
Yeah.
You had.
NOE was very cautious, so when
had the time to assess that and see. Yeah, and in the case of Virtual Boy, you've spared them some blushes, I guess. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with a 4 on this one, not knowing a lot about it, but being predisposed against Zappa games.
Punch Out, but this time with Mr. Dream.
Yeah, the reissues. I get this is after their contract with Tyson expired, and obviously there was the issue of his disgrace as well, but I don't really think that was the reason.
That was not the reason. The reason was that they figured that they had basically milked all of the value out. And so let's just replace him.
I think they signed a contract with him back in the, mid '80s that had so long on it, and there was, I guess, no reason to kind of seek a re-up, on that, was there? So.
And my understanding is that they signed the contract right before he got huge, because like Nintendo was also never gonna be the company that would shill out the amount of money that contract ended up being worth.
No, I seem to recall that as well. It was just a case of that Yamauchi's son-in-law, who was running NOA back then, like just saw him in New York before he was really, really big, and that was the impetus for it. So they kind of made hay out of that. But obviously, it's still the same excellent game without Tyson and all that. So it still gets a 10 from me.
Okay, Cobra Triangle.
So I had this, as I mentioned. I remember enjoying it. I don't know how much the full kind of play of this got even cut short a little bit by the fact that our NES broke down. It was in 1990 that it had, probably towards the back end of 90, that the NES stopped being reliable. It was a gradual thing. It kind of went from, at first, it would boot up the cartridge, but just not all the time, to eventually basically never did, and we kind of gave up. So, and it was probably after probably was after 2 years had elapsed from when we got it at the end of '87, and it was just kind of like, okay, we're moving on. And then in early '91, we had the Super Famicom, but. So yeah, the memories are vague, and I've not. This is on Rare Replay, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So I think I checked in with it a little bit just to kind of mess around, but as we mentioned last time, not the most kind of time I put in with a lot of those older games on there. So it's all a bit fuzzy, but based on favourable sort of memories, and the music was quite good and stuff, I'll give it an 8.
Okay. Faxanadu.
So this one I played on, I think it was the Japanese Virtual Console I got this for,
Hmm.
because I assume it was on the PAL one, because, but you know, I thought, but maybe it was the Zelda 2 experience that made me think, no, you know, I'll play it so it's full speed, full screen, but then you know I'll use the guide to kind of get through as much as I can where the Japanese, you know, is a barrier to progression. So yeah, I don't think I got all the way to the end, but I did play it quite a lot. It is very autumnal in its color scheme.
Yes.
It's you know, so it's not the most kind of varied, colorful kind of game. NES palette. You had limitations, but in this case, it was due to the theming of the game. It's kind of a world tree type situation,
Hmm.
or something like that. So, that's not in the best of health or whatever. So, yeah, I quite like this. I'll give this a 7, I think.
Okay. Golf for the Game Boy. Oh, get ready for
Yeah.
some wild Game Boy games also.
So this is going to be the kind of full suite of launch games, but maybe with some extra stuff kicked in.
Yeah.
Like things that they picked up for the European launch. So golf. I mean, like I said, I played NES golf, so quite a lot, and generally kind of like that. But I think Game Boy Golf is a little bit beyond that in terms of it's perhaps not quite as utilitarian as that game was. Obviously, on Famicom, they kind of kept iterating on golf. Like they had like some games that were just like different courses and
Hmm.
stuff. And then eventually you got to NES Open Tournament Golf, which I guess is probably coming up a bit later on, which was a fair bit more sophisticated as a game. I don't think Game Boy Golf is at that level.
It is not at that level, no.
No, so it's probably between a 6 and a 7 for me on this one. So I would go a 6.
Okay. Solar Striker for Game Boy.
So this is the shoot 'em up, right? And I've never heard particularly great things about it. It's one of these things that you kind of maybe a little bit intrigue, a little bit of sort of curiosity about seeing what this was like, because it's not an area that Nintendo has particularly sort of delved into over the years, because usually like someone else
Hmm.
would kind of do it for them essentially.
Yes.
If you were going to clearly, as with a lot of these games, on early Game Boy games, it's like, well, we're launching a system. We need to have certain kind of pillars of the
Yep.
lineup, like represent. So this is a system, a platform that has all these different kinds of experiences as part of it, and this will demonstrate what it can do in that regard. And so, but in a lot of cases, it'd be like, okay, well, Konami's got a Gradius or something like it, or they might have other publishers. But yeah, in this case they did it, but apparently it's not that great. So
Yeah.
yes, I guess maybe a 5 for this.
Okay.
But in some ways that might be generous, but I have not played it to really kind of go deeper on it.
What about Kicks?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a version of this.
Um,
Something you
so
hear about an awful lot,
yes,
but
GX in the Twitch chat has been dropping images of all these games. Um,
okay.
if you want to just go click through, Kicks is a vector based game in a really weird way.
Yeah, it's I guess probably the most I've ever seen of this would probably be I think when Jeremy Parish did his well, he's still doing it,
Yes.
obviously take forever, but he's still doing the chronological Game Boy videos. Would go
Yes.
through the whole lineup as they came out in North America. And that was many years ago now, and it was a video.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not the kind of it's tough to say, and I have not played obviously many versions of this down the years, but
Yes.
again, that was another thing that happened quite a lot with Game Boy, was your kind of arcade conversions to kind of just show that it's kind of it's a weird coalition because it's got games that were like particularly apt for portability in some cases, but then it's like, okay, well, you can have some version or type of that's a console experience but kind of shrunk down, and then in other cases it'd be arcade experience, or then even others still like PC. Like, so it had just like drawing from everywhere. I guess you just kind of early days in a system, you try everything and see what works. But I think I feel like it had a kind of respectable kind of reputation, but I can't really speak to it directly.
Okay.
So maybe a 6 on that one.
Okay. Alleyway.
Yeah, this has not got such a good.
No, it sure doesn't.
I again keep referring back to that buyer's guide that had it. I think it had it covered some of the I think it must have been from 1990 and probably right around the time that either the Game Boy had come out or maybe it hadn't come out in Europe yet, but they played on an import Game Boy and reviewed like the first basically all these games that.
This was one of the first 4 games in Japan also. This is the launch game of launch games.
Yeah, and it's Breakout, right?
It's Breakout, but less good because we want to launch our portable with Breakout and let's rush it.
Yeah, so I don't think there's too much to be. I mean, I've not got anything against Breakout. Like the Kirby Breakout game on Game Boy is quite fun, I think. But years later. But I think, we'd give this a 3.
Okay. Baseball.
Yeah, again, this one, not played it. It must be, a similar sort of thing as to golf in terms of just kind of taking Famicom Baseball and, maybe update it. So, because Famicom Baseball was quite old by the time they updated it for the Game Boy. So I assume they advanced it somewhat, but...
Not that much.
Game Boy offers its own limitations.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's only so far they could take it. So I think, given that, I mean, again, it's more of an estimate, but considering probably just based on how much I've played NES golf and baseball and kind of projecting that, it's not going to contend with golf. So I think it's going to be a 4.
Okay. Game Boy Tetris.
Yeah, so definitely played. I actually played this a fair bit on original hardware on some of those school days that I referenced before, where it's the end of term, everybody's just in there to fuck around, and people, other people had Game Boy was not on the table for us because we was saving up all our efforts to go into the future with Super Famicom. But the Game Boy was something, that when other people had it, I was like, oh yeah, I really want to try that. And of course, Tetris was everywhere. It was, and you kind of had to see what the fuss was about because, that was, it was such a big deal, and you could see the appeal pretty much straight away. So I think we'll go with a 9 on that one.
Okay. Game Boy Tennis.
Yeah, pretty much in the kind of same realm as baseball or golf, I guess. Again, I'm not familiar enough with it in detail to say how much it kind of moved the goalpost relative to the Famicom stuff, but really it was just about getting something in that vein. So I think based again on just playing Famicom one a bit, I'm going to go with a 5.
All right, and now on to the truly weird shit. So this is. You were talking about how during launch lineups you want to make sure you have a little bit of everything. Nintendo of Europe, when the Game Boy came out, wanted to make sure that third-party games were getting brought over for a European audience, so they picked a few. Boulder Dash for Game Boy.
Yeah, this is not something that I really would have been aware,
Yeah.
would have had, like, NOE kind of pushing it, but yeah, I guess it is just, at that time, especially, like publishers weren't necessarily, a lot of publishers would not have had their own like European
distribution,
and stuff. So I guess there is a legitimate kind of issue of like, look, especially when the market for this particular device has not yet been proven, it's you kind of feel like there's value to be had of like, okay, let's pick up a few select, kind of titles and
Yes.
broaden it out a bit, and because otherwise maybe it doesn't look like it's got as much support as it actually does, because obviously in other places in the world there was plenty of people but yeah, so this is computer again. I did mention the computer games did factor in quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
to the early Game Boy scenario, especially something where it could be maze games, pushing block puzzle games. Like it became quite quickly a very strong kind of genre or kind of sector of the Game Boy market. So I guess it does kind of make sense. It just I wouldn't have known that or picked it. But in terms of how fun the game is, I've not played any version of it, so it's I'm a little bit of a
Yeah.
disadvantage. So I think probably just go with a 5 on that.
Okay. Double Dragon.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Of course, the NES Double Dragon is kind of relatively famous for not really having the eponymous double element to it.
Uh-huh.
Except for it did have the one-on-one bit, right, where you could just like fight each other like in a almost like proto fighting game kind of mode,
Mm-hmm.
but the actual game you didn't have it. So the I think the Game Boy, I guess it would seem like a little bit of a weird choice for Double Dragon in terms of like is it going to be like an early link cable kind of game? So yeah, how did they kind of
Uh,
resolve that?
I
Very
don't
interesting.
believe they did.
That would have been my guess as well in terms of just
Yes.
one would assume, because I think
It's new
because
levels for reference.
okay,
So it is
because
new content, but it is still single player.
it's interesting because you've got a number of levels on which this kind of works, isn't it? In terms of how much is this? Okay, we've Game Boy game, and we're going to look at the arcade game, or how much is this? We want the portable version of the console game
Mm-hmm.
that presumably had some success. So there was probably a few different kind of ways of approaching this kind of thing back in those days, and it's uh, to me, usually it was better if you kind of really concentrated
Oh,
on
I
enjoying the graphics and all this kind of stuff.
I take that back. It does have link cable support,
Okay, so well, there you go. I think that is
but
commendable.
only versus.
I still think it's commendable that they kind of added that, because it must have been. I mean, the link cable was definitely something that was pushed like from the beginning, but I assume it was still some sort of additional kind of hassle to get
Definitely.
it done. But I guess that also suggests that it was very much trying to emulate the console game. That one-on-one sort of kind of component of the game that I assume it was just put into the console version to
Mm-hmm.
preserve a double, a multiplayer.
Presumably, yes. So
Yeah,
that you don't call
so
it single dragon.
yeah, you didn't want to be accused of false advertising, so yeah, they I think on that basis maybe I'm gonna skew a little bit higher on the ambiguity scale here and go 6.
Okay. What about King of the Zoo?
What about King of the Zoo?
Did your do you have strong recollections of someone in your class bringing their copy of Nintendo of Europe published King of the Zoo for Game Boy?
No, I do not. This is a completely foreign kind of scenario to me, but it's so
Well,
now.
what I'm thinking is maybe you should be suggesting this for a retroactive. Um, it is called Penguin Wars in North
Yeah,
America.
So I certainly do remember this also by virtue of Jeremy Parish's Game Boy Works, kind of progression through. Otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't know it. But
Holy shit, has this been on a lot of platforms?
yeah,
It was an
it's
arcade game that got an MSX port, that got an NES port, that got an NEC PC 8801 port, it got a Fujitsu FM7 port, it got a Sharp X1 port, a Sharp MZ 2500 port, and then the Game Boy was the first to come out outside of Japan.
right. That's where it kind of was able to find. Again, I think there was a fair few of these where you might have something that for whatever reason was like relatively widespread in Japan, and then when you got
Yes.
to the Game Boy version, it kind of is where it got to a more international kind of exposure.
It is
But
on
yeah,
Switch and PS4,
so there's a modern kind of
presumably
version
as
of
an arcade archives.
yeah. So it's kind of I remember vaguely kind of being commented on that it had sort of some merit, but obviously quite limited. So I think we'd maybe stick with the 6 on that one.
Okay.
But the name though, what's up with that?
I have no idea.
Why is
Uh,
King of the Zoo more
it's
like that?
penguiny. You know, penguins are the king of the zoo, not lions. I know it makes you think about lions. No, 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 no. Penguins. Alright. I want you to Google Quirk with an I Game Boy and tell me what you see with that box art.
Okay, let's do it. It is coming. I don't know why it's being a little slow, but oh yes. Okay. So I've seen this image. Yeah,
Is this
definitely.
not the most 1990 product that Nintendo of Europe could have put out?
It's yes, it is pretty intense, isn't it? It's
Thanks, Acclaim.
the tude is there. It's a red circle with sunglasses and a green mohawk. So, but
And it's a
equally,
maze game!
that's what I love about it is that it is just for all the dressing up, it is just another one of these block pushing puzzle type top down things that obviously, as we said, quickly sort of gained traction and was kind of the bread and butter of the console for a
Uh-huh.
time anyway. So yeah, not a lot to say other than all the kind of accompaniments. Not a lot to say on this one. I think I'll go with a 5.
Okay. Mercenary Force.
Yes, that's very generic. Let's consult with what this actually entails.
That
Well,
cover art is also intense for what this is.
yes, it is. Yeah, so I guess it's interesting because
It's a shooter.
it's a shoot 'em up, but kind of how they're trying to sell it is interesting. It's kind of like you are playing down the Japanese kind of element of it, but it's mercenary force, so you sort of get yourself into a very, generic place with that.
Yes.
And it's kind of, you know, with a shoot, if it as a shoot 'em up, I guess the problem is in those days that most shoot 'em ups had the sort of space or sci-fi theme, but it doesn't. So it's straight.
Uh-oh. Oh no. Please hold.
Bias got to kick it in. But if I heard that, I probably would have been thinking something more like Russian attack, or Contra, or something that involves kind of maybe run and gun. So it's yeah, I'm not sure about that decision, but I kind of like the idea, but based on what looking at there, that it actually kind of alternates the scrolling types, because I don't know, the games that I've played that do that I've usually quite enjoyed, like Salamander or Axlay are quite cool. Of course, you could do that and be terrible, like that's perfectly plausible. But on this basis, I think it sounds like something I'd quite like to try, like kind of course, in terms of like Japanese themed alternating scrolling shooter that I would actually quite like to try. So I'll edge on the higher side and say a 6.
Okay. Sorry about all the technical difficulties, folks. We're making it work. Othello.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is with Othello, so I straight up with a 5, I think, on that one.
Okay. Holy shit. The Amazing Spider-Man. And if you've never seen this, you owe it to yourself to look at this.
I feel as if I probably saw this advertised quite a bit.
Oh, almost assuredly, Nintendo gets to advertise Spider-Man? You're gonna see a lot of ads. You should look at the game, though.
Yeah, but the game itself, no, I don't recall. This is the kind of thing that probably, it was possible that it could have been something I would have played at school on someone else's Game Boy. I like Spider-Man, I like Nintendo, but it didn't happen. And well, perhaps for the best.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean it is. I did. I don't. Like I said, with a lot of licenses that I like, I don't end up playing the most adaptations of them.
Valid.
Oftentimes, yeah, because like a lot of them back in the day weren't very good. Like, and you kind of knew that. I mean, I think there was an Amazing Spider-Man on Genesis that I rented because we had a PAL Mega Drive that we could just rent games, which is something we didn't really have the luxury of with the Super Famicom for a long time. And that had an Amazing Spider-Man game that was decent, but I guess this is just not that.
No.
It is an LJN job.
Yes.
So they've got an interesting past, haven't they?
Yeah, no, this game is terrible.
So I think for sullying the good name of Spider-Man and probably putting me off other Spider-Man games, in the film, maybe we'll give it a 2.
Okay. Composed by alleged anti-vaxxer David Wise. I'm saying alleged so I'm not in trouble. Wizards and Warriors X, The Fortress of Fear.
So Amazing Spider-Man was rare, but
yes.
then Wizards and Warriors is also rare, correct? Yeah, so...
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah. So, again, my familiarity with this is mostly down to Game Boy Works, so I think I think it's kind of, it's not altogether awful or anything, but it's not particularly good either, so a 4.
Okay. Super Mario Land.
Yeah, this was one that definitely got played in school on one of those, and I think probably I'm pretty sure I beat it. I can certainly remember getting.
It's pretty short.
It is short, and it's I'm pretty sure I can remember being in the Sky Pop at least, which is quite deep in the game.
Yes, that's like very late. Yeah.
Yeah, so I either beat it or got very close to it in there, and then of course I played it on Virtual Console when that was like one of the first games that came out as well, and it's still quite fun. Obviously, it's limited and wonky as a kind of representation of Super Mario Brothers, but it gets some points for having some of its own personality. The shoot 'em up stages, I mean, they're not brilliant or anything, but I intrinsically like shoot 'em up, so I'm not averse to them being there. So I'll give it a 7.
Okay. 1991. You know, we might have gotten Super Nintendo and Super Famicom everywhere else, but Nintendo of Europe wants to know, how much do you know about third-party NES games that hadn't come out here yet?
Yeah, so like I said, this is the year that we get the Super Famicom and essentially completely check out of what the fuck the NOE was doing entirely.
I got good news for you. It's a lot of bullshit.
But also, this was the year that they decided to do stuff.
They released 24 products. One of these is a Game & Watch. In 1991. Not many of which are worth talking about. I have been waiting for this to get to 1991 since we started, so let's do it. Starting with Super Mario Brothers 3, a little game.
Yeah, a little game that I can remember seeing all the hype for. When it finally happened. Like all the marketing and the advertisements and all this, and it's just like, I've already played Super Mario Brothers 4. So go fuck yourself. But obviously, it is a great game on its own merits. Terrific stuff. When I did finally get to play it in its entirety, many years later, it still holds up. I played through it on NSO. Like one of the
it's great.
So that's a 10.
Okay. Dr. Mario.
Yeah, I've not played that much Dr. Mario in my life.
No, this is going to be a problem because Nintendo has released like 13 versions of Dr. Mario.
Yeah, basically the main version that I actually spent some time with was the one on WiiWare. So it was kind of like just
launch
like
game,
and the Virus Buster kind of mode where you kind of use the pointer, wasn't it?
Yeah, pointer or stylus because it came from Brain Age.
Yeah, that's right. So it was kind of their, alternate take on it for different control schemes.
Yep.
And I guess it carried over. But yeah, I quite liked it. I wasn't, like way into it, but I thought it was okay, and especially that Virus Buster mode. So it's probably a 6.5, but I'll go with a 6.
Okay. Barker Bill's Trick Shooting.
Barker Bill's Trick Shooting. I mean, what am I meant to say? Oh my word. Okay, let's up. Is this another Zapper game that would soundly? Yes, it is. Light gun shooting game. And it was released by Nintendo in the US as well.
Yes, it was.
But I do love the fact that when it just when you look it up and it just sort of matter-of-factly, as of course it would say, based on the 1950s television series Barker Bill's Cartoon.
Hell yeah, Nintendo! Really tapping into that 40-year-old 40 to 50-year-old audience in 1991.
The zeitgeist is strong there. I'm just so befuddled. I'm just gonna give it the 4.
Okay. Super Spike V-Ball.
So, is there any reason why they couldn't say volleyball, or
I don't know.
Because when you say spike, it certainly sounds like volleyball. So why can't we say it's volleyball?
I mean, we've released a game called Volleyball already by this point, so I'm just gonna say that it's not a brand. It's a branding decision, not a branding requirement.
Yeah, just a differentiation.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Super Spike there, but presumably they felt they needed something a little bit extra. So yeah, it's I'm assuming it's given this is a Technos arcade game originally. There was a very big line of things. They did all these kinds of sports games and all that, as well as the beat 'em up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably pretty fun.
Yeah,
Despite
I think
the
so.
weird...
I think it's well received.
So I'm gonna be a little bit conservative. Having not played it, and just give it a 6.
Okay. Pinbot by Rare based on the pinball tables.
Yeah. Now, so I have played, the kind of modern recreations of this table, like Pinball Arcade,
Yes.
like Farsight, I guess. And it's a fun table. I do quite like it, but I have no idea what an NES recreation of that would be like. I do believe, once again, that this was something that was covered in magazines at the time, because
Yes.
it would have been made by Rare, probably, because especially if you were reading like the biggest magazine back then that was multi-format, well, like all formats, I should say. Like you had basically the publisher at the time. I think it was EMAP, but I could be wrong because this is very long ago and I was a small child at the time. But their sort of all-encompassing magazine was Computer and Video Games, CVG,
Yes.
sure, and that did cover everything. It had all the kind of computer games and stuff. So they obviously didn't cover everything that they could have done. Otherwise, there wasn't enough room in that magazine to do that. But I assume things like this being a Rare game would have played some role in choosing to cover it. And then Mean Machines was their console dedicated kind of arm, which later, once the 16-bit era truly got going, it split off into an official Nintendo magazine and a Sega magazine, and then CVG just kept being itself for several years. But so I believe I read about it a little bit, but I really can't remember anything about how good or not it was meant to be as a recreation of a I would have thought it's a kind of dubious decision, because in these days, obviously it's difficult to get
physics.
Pinball physics are really good. It's going to be very difficult to attain.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to say, okay, well, there's things we can do that real tables can't do, right? Because we're a video game. So you'd rather lean into that than try and recreate a real table that you can't, because you don't have the visual.
But what if we tried?
Yeah, what if we try? It seems a bit wrong-headed to me, so I'm going to give it a 4. But maybe it's surprisingly good. I don't know.
Okay. Snake, Rattle, and Roll, also by Rare.
A very prolific Rare. Now, this one has, I think, had a pretty good reputation back then. But I didn't get around to playing it. But I think it was pretty well thought of. I don't know how you see about going back to it. Is this something that's been re-released?
Yeah, it's in Rare Replay.
Oh, it is. Right. Again, I really do need to explore that a little bit more. But maybe one day I can actually give it a bit more of a informed sort of take. But for now, I'll go with the 7 on that one.
Okay. Nintendo World Cup.
Yeah, so I guess this is we're sort of getting a more advanced take on soccer from Nintendo here.
Yes.
But, I'm trying to remember. There's a Technos. Is this another Technos game that they're bringing over, or is that the Game Boy one? Because I know there's a.
I don't know.
There is a case where I think they took a Technos kind of spin on soccer, football, and sold it as Nintendo World Cup elsewhere in the world. It wouldn't have been in any sort of meaningful way kind of descended. Yes, it is the localization of Neketsu High School Dodgeball.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so again, I would assume it's actually pretty solid. So we'll go with a 6 on that one. But again, it's a guess.
Okay. Barai Fighter. Lots and lots of media GX posting in the chat for this one.
Ooh, okay. This is intriguing, I guess. Is it? uh, hmm. So let's see. Another shooter. So, and this one we do have a similar kind of scenario with the alternating the scrolling styles, which is like I said, I guess whether I don't know whether I genuinely like that style or I just like the very few games I've played that actually
Yeah.
do it. It's kind of difficult to disentangle there, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to go with the 5 on this one. Some intriguing components, but I just don't have enough to work with beyond that.
Okay. Stealth ATF.
Stealth ATF. So
Yes.
is this anything to do with alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, or
No. No.
I guess it wouldn't really make sense to sell that in Europe, would it?
No, it would not.
I, you know, I, I'm not sure if that many people now in Britain would know what that acronym stands for, but certainly then you wouldn't have had much chance of getting a great deal of recognition at that time.
Well,
But
I mean, it's a
yeah,
stealth release.
yes, yeah, there you go. I get well. It is. I guess it is part of the kind of the line of kind of aircraft games that was very kind of which I guess look, Top Gun just and probably various other things made this big kind of explosion in interest in military hardware of the time, and
Yes.
it was the stealth fighter was reserved for sort of special kind of you know interest and kind of veneration because it's this sci-fi thing, like radar can't even see it and all that. Like, I mean, around about not far from this time, I would have been playing UN Squadron, well, Area 88, the Japanese version of it, which has like stealth fighters and stealth bombers, like enemies and bosses and all that. It was in the zeitgeist, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's where you're trying to kind of it's just trying to tap into that, something that kids think is cool, people older than children think is cool at the time. But in terms of the quality, I mean, all I could say is was not that big on Top Gun because we did have again, it was a Konami game, and therefore we had it, and and
Yes.
yeah, that was not that much fun. So I think I'm gonna go based on that. It's a little bit harsh because it might be better, it might be different, but I'm guessing it's just kind of like Top Gun did well commercially, and we're
Yeah.
kind of probably following its lead too much. So it's gonna be a 4.
Okay. The Battle of Olympus by Broderbund.
Okay, so yeah, this is I guess presumably the a PC kind of situation.
I think I'm not 100% sure.
But there were plenty of the Broderbund games that got like these ports to consoles, and
Yeah.
in Japan, like which there's the one that really hit it big, isn't there? There was like a relatively big hit in
Oh,
the sort
yeah.
of early days. I can't remember, but in terms of Battle of Olympus, it's one of these ones that I've heard the name over the years. But not really ever had any chance to kind of get to know it. So it's, I think it was, kind of quite, somewhat well thought of, as a side-scrolling kind of game. But it's just one of these sorts of. There was a whole bunch of games that were a little bit in this kind of vein back then, where it's like they weren't exactly kind of Metroid, but they were kind of more in like the Simon's Quest, the Zelda 2, there was it's sort of a somewhat adventure-y side scrollers.
Mm-hmm.
That in terms of the level of quality, yeah, I haven't got a lot to go on directly.
Okay. So
So Let's. I'm gonna go with 6.
Okay. Solar Jetman Hunt for the Golden Warp Ship.
Yeah, this one was definitely one that got covered a fair bit.
Oh, you don't say.
Another rare
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
This was really well for like this reviewed really well in CVG or Meme Machines, one or the other, whichever it was, maybe
Yep.
both. So like it was something. It's like it was kind of in that phase where it's like, okay, well, we're not getting NES games anymore, so that ship sailed. So it was kind of like, oh, I would like to try that, but you know,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. And then I did toy with this a little bit in Rare Replay, but not enough to get a really strong sort of sense that whether how much it kind of earned that reputation. But I guess the kind of it kind of was it had a lineage, didn't it, of the various kind of with jetpack, and then
Yep.
there was a lunar jetman right before
Yes.
this one. So it was kind of something of a series, and yes, it was kind of the physics of it was really kind of the one of the kind of distinctive
Yeah.
kind of
Yep.
features of that kind of gameplay.
Yeah, I
at
played
the
all these
time.
through Rare Replay.
So I mean, having not actually played it, it would be nicer if I had to really get a good sense. But I think maybe an 8, or
Okay.
probably 7.5, 8, something like
Yeah.
that. We'll go.
Solstice, the quest for the Staff of Demnus.
Demnus. Okay, so yeah, this is one of those where I'm very much in the dark. It's not occurring to me.
There's some box art and screenshots in the chat.
All right, well that's your first stop along the way. Let's have a look. Simply Solstice. I like that. Yeah, so this one is actually a legit case where it's like, okay, it's coming to Europe under the kind of Nintendo,
Yes.
kind of umbrella, but yeah, not something that was not the case in the US. But yeah, you got your. I could kind of see why Nintendo might have brought it over to the UK anyway, because it's an isometric.
It sure the fuck is. It looks
It's
bad.
It's a kind of strong tradition of
yes.
microcomputer games being dominated by dominate is probably a bit strong, but you know what I mean.
Oh yes. I love all of the isometric garbage on the ZX Spectrum.
Yeah, honestly, like, that stuff, because I mean, I don't even remember this, but I mean, our family before we had an NES had Atari.
Mm-hmm.
So we just however it came to be, we would the Spectrum, the whole microcomputer thing, it didn't exist in our household, and I just remember being vaguely baffled by like sometimes being friends, and it's like they put a cassette in and then it takes ages to load. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yes.
When you just raised on NES, it's kind of difficult to do.
Yes.
But, in this case, I guess I'm gonna go with the 4.
Okay.
Based on my prejudice against such games.
Little Nemo the Dream Master.
No direct familiarity with this, but isn't this quite well?
This is Capcom, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a case of they're bringing a Capcom game across, which really didn't get into Capcom stuff until the Super Nintendo myself, the Super Famicom, the various, ended up playing lots of Capcom games, and then of course, the N64 comes along. And there was no Capcom to be had anymore, really. Certainly in that generation, I really got to like their games, and so there was a number again. Like their games were pushed like in the European kind of Club Nintendo materials. Like Mega Man was really actively kind of suggested, and I thought, cool. Didn't get around to trying it back then and all that, but With this, I think just vague impressions are going to go with an 8.
Okay. Isolated Warrior, which has a bunch of things in the chat right now. It's an isometric shooter.
Okay, so I guess in this case, I mean, again, isometric. I'm not that pumped, but it's Zaxxon, I guess, would be if you say isometric shooter to me, that's the first thing I think about. But I mean, yeah, this, it's I don't think it looks as appealing as Zaxxon
No.
immediately. So what I'm trying to sort of pass with this one is what the kind of logic for this being something that Nintendo would want to bring, other than just the whole isometric thing again.
This was developed by KID, published in Japan by VAP, in North America by NTVIC, and in Europe by Nintendo.
That is really bloody strange, isn't it?
Yes.
I've just
Wikipedia. Yeah.
reach a thread here that explains something.
Wikipedia's opening paragraph says similar to Sega Zaxxon.
Yeah, but obviously, I mean, the thing about that was what, like 82 in the arcades or something. So
Yeah.
it just feels it's not exact. Again, the zeitgeist element. I'm not really. I just go with the 4. I don't know what else to make it. That is kind of fascinating. Listen, because with the previous case with Solstice, whichever one it was, the one that was developed by Broderbund, like I could see that more because like some of their games got adapted into consoles and were successful in different markets.
Some reviews felt mixed in regards to the sound difficulty and replay value, while common complaints were geared towards the amount of flickering throughout the game.
Oh, yes.
Now we're talking about games pushing the NES too far.
Yeah, well, I mean, even stuff like Gradius, was kind of had a lot of flickering on it and all. But I mean, isometric. If anything, I would have thought if you do it because usually isometric games, you think of them being quite pedestrian. Like they're not very actiony. But yeah, trying to do a Zaxxon type of thing.
All right, so
sense.
I'm real excited for this one. Also developed by KID, designed by Ken Lobb. Low G Man, the Low Gravity Man, which, one, you should look at this fucking box art.
It's, yes, Low G Man, the Low Gravity Man. So we've got, it's just got a sort of giant G, and we've got these feet that are leaving the frame, and that's it, on a kind of, pale gold coloured box.
And also important to note, very proud of this in the year 1991, includes password feature.
Yeah, that is, I mean, I guess it is a weird thing to advertise. I mean, the only thing I can imagine is that it's kind of like, say, like, this game is long enough that it needs one. Like, that's the selling point.
Many felt divided in regards to the graphics, sound, and gameplay, and common complaints were geared towards the jerky background scrolling, choppy animations, small character sprites, and color scheme. That's everything. Praise.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
Praise was given to the fast-paced soundtrack and large bosses.
Well, I mean, the box art and the name that is just pretty duplicative as well. I'm gonna give it a 4. I probably could go lower, but I think just for the box art, and so he's gonna get the 4.
Okay, I've been as soon as I started typing this in, I had to triple take when I saw Low G Man, the Low Gravity Man.
Again, I'm just struggling to see what the kind of kernel is for, like, okay, this is something that we need to facilitate, because that's what you're doing, isn't it? And it's like you've only got so much bandwidth.
Yes.
As NOE, so it's like there is a clear opportunity cost with this stuff, you know. And
There
it's like,
sure is.
you're really telling me there wasn't something? But again, I guess you mentioned it's the same company
That did
so,
Isolated Warrior? Absolutely.
yeah, so it's like I guess there was some sort of pipeline there that became a thing for some reason, but it just it is baffling, and it's
Yes.
something that what I will say is, I mean, you might have thought, even though I fully have said, you know, I would basically be totally checked out of what NOE was doing at this point, but you might have thought, given that they bothered to get this thing and publish it, that I would have at least heard of it, but I
No.
genuinely had.
I remember.
You might think that would stick, that name. I mean, 'cause
yes.
it's so silly.
I want to be clear. Barai Fighter, Stealth ATF, Battle of Olympus, Solstice, The Quest for the Staff of Demnus, Little Nemo the Dream Master, Isolated Warrior, Low G-Man. All of this is at the same time that they're fucking putting out Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yeah,
Why?
It's so strange. I don't know, but the other thing I don't really know, because obviously people in general, you know, I think especially the perception, you know, outside of the UK anyway, because again, you know, they're thinking about the whole European market, and they were, you know, and still are, you know, very different from each other. You know, in many cases, it's not, you can't just generalize the whole region, but yeah, there was a sense that, you know, UK wasn't that into NES, you know, relative to the US. But of course, for me, you know, I had one, and you know, and certainly I knew other people that played Nintendo stuff and all that. So it didn't really feel like, you know, it was something that was struggling or whatever. But I don't know, like, is this some weird function of that? Like, you know,
Yeah.
they felt like, you know, because I guess by the time you get to 91, you know, Mega Drive, as you know, Genesis, as he was known as Mega Drive over here, had really, you know, caught on. You know, Master System was like not an irrelevance in the UK. That had, I knew people had Master Systems and stuff, but Mega Drive really got big. So I don't know whether it's some weird like riposte or what it is that's going on here, but yeah, it all kind of went over my head.
A Boy and His Blob, Trouble on Blobolonia.
Yeah, this I you know, I've seen a little bit of. I think somewhere, I'm struggling to remember where. This is there's a sequel to A Boy and His Blob as well, but is this not that, or
This is, I believe, the original A Boy and His Blob.
But yeah, the kind of console port, you know, kind of the consoleized kind of idea of it. So yeah, I think it's kind of, my recollections of this are that it, you know, it has a certain amount of merit, but there's a lot of things that don't really quite work with it.
It's
so
fine.
Maybe a 5.
Okay. Double Dragon, which for context is a year after Double Dragon comes out on Game Boy in Europe.
Yeah, that's
Double Dragon. Nintendo in Europe put out that Game Boy game and was like, "What do you mean it's never come out on NES here?"
That is a strange one, but I guess you know, maybe it was that all of a sudden, you know, like I said, we've gone from, they almost seem to be trying to put out as little as possible before, and now
yes, well, 1989 we have 2 games. 1991 we have 24. Same company. Like I said, they swing back and forth.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, okay, well, now that the tap is being turned on again, we will actually do this. That is a strange one, but you know, I think I played this a tiny little bit once. You know, the actual NES version.
Yeah, it's whatever.
But I think a 5 is probably somewhere in the right region.
Kickle Cubicle.
I only know this name for one reason and one reason alone, and that is Radio Trivia Podcast Edition. There's like this sort of meme about it with Radio Trivia about, I think it goes back to when it was a live game, actually, when they played Radio Trivia live before the pod, but I only learned about it through the podcast edition. But like TYP did a kind of cut-in commercial for that for podcast edition that you could put into episodes of RFN that actually used this bit of music like from Kickle Cubicle all the time, because presumably there was some experience in the past where it would get played just to kind of, as a meme to annoy people, because it's like got this sort of intro that just starts like da 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 da, and it would just like keep doing it over and over again. So it's like that is the entire scope of my knowledge of Kickle Cubicle. I couldn't tell you much of the game. I couldn't tell you. Would not guess that this was something that was in Europe either. So I guess in terms of assessing its quality outside of its ability to generate, kind of memes and commercials for Radio Trivia Podcast Edition, I'm a little bit of a loss. But let's see, grid-based puzzles. Yes, that's. Very nice. I guess it's kind of surprising that this is this a Game Boy game as well?
I don't believe so.
It seems
missed
like
opportunity.
In terms of something that was very much in the zeitgeist. I think I'm probably going to have to go with a 5 on this one. Not enough to go on, but certainly I'm not going to go lower than that, just for the silly memories of podcast.
Last NES game of this year, Super Off-Road.
Yeah, I think this had a decent reputation from what I can recall, but again, it's not something that I would have played. But I guess, it's just another case of, them trying to, bring all these different kinds of I mean, is this something that could have been seen as like, something that people who bought RC Pro-Am would also have liked to buy,
Yeah.
like, is that
Kind of in that way. Yeah.
I guess like like not the literal sequels, but like with Nintendo World Cup and some of these, it's like, okay, well, we had the launch type stuff in '87 or whatever, but like now you could kind of buy again. And I guess this was something that I think I'm most familiar with. The fact that it was there was a very early Super Nintendo version of this. But it didn't.
Was it called Super Off-Road?
Yes, that is the problem, isn't it? With the way how liberally the super thing was kind of tossed around. That there is, or maybe like a super to the power of 2.
Yes.
Could have done, but I think it was kind of had a decent kind of reputation, but then it was kind of latterly surpassed by things like was it Rock and Roll Racing?
Yes.
So maybe we'll go with a 7.
Okay. All right. So picture this for me, Greg.
Okay.
So you are Nintendo, and in Japan right now, you've got the NES, which you are still actively putting out games for, or the Famicom. You've got the Super Famicom, which just launched this year, and it launched in North America, and it's going fucking great. People love your games, 16-bit fidelity, smooth scrolling, Mode 7. You've got the Game Boy. You own the handheld gaming market. So what product do you put out next? I think, might I recommend one, a Game & Watch. 2, not just any Game & Watch, ball with a Mario skin.
Yeah, well, I mean, evidently this is an idea so good that its time has come multiple times.
Yes, it sure the fuck has.
We've not only had it, evidently we had it here, but then also Game Watch Gallery, and with the Mario Game Watch that came out last year.
Yes, and to underscore, this was the same price as a Game Boy game.
Oh, I mean, I guess it's a physical unit, but still, it's.
This is right before. Actually, no. Around this time in Japan and Europe, they're starting to put out Game and Watch galleries. But
I mean that.
at the same time, let's put out Mario the fucking Juggler, which Nintendo of America also distributed.
At the same time.
Yeah.
That is so weird because you just think, you know, once the Game Boy comes out and it proves itself, and then, you know, you've got other people.
I told you they were gonna be Game and Watch games way the fuck after they should have been.
It's just, you think like, yeah, once you get to that point where it's like, okay, Game Boy is a thing, and like other people are trying to come and steal our lunch on that. Like, you just got to think that would be all the focus would be on, you know, maximizing value on that. But,
yes.
Well, there you go. Given what it is and the timing and the weirdness of it, I think it can have a 3. It can go below the customary 4.
Yeah, but like, you've also put out a fucking Legend of Zelda Game and Watch at this point. You've made prestige Game and Watches. Nah.
Yeah, it is really strange. It's kind of like some weird wraparound, isn't it? Like Legend of Zelda is like kind of one of the furthermost kind of examples of what they could do with Game & Watch, and then they just looped all the way back around to the start.
Yes.
Like,
real quick, GX, and you won't be able to see this, post in chat was held by my auto moderator for the reason of bullying. Said, "Bring Donkey Kong Hockey to Switch, you cowards." And it didn't just hate you cowards, it hated the word donkey.
Yeah. Well,
So I am allowing the word donkey and the phrase "you cowards" in my chat. Congratulations, GX. You double tripped my mod in one.
Still though, I mean, that is, we must guard against Nintendo being bullied, especially when it comes to bringing very specific, like esoteric
Game and Watches to Switch. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Radar mission.
Yeah, so we're back to the early Game Boy stuff again. This is just kind of the boilerplate kind of stuff, isn't it? This is not well thought of. I've never tried it.
No, it is not.
It kind of came up a little bit in the context of Steel Diver, I get, you know.
A little bit.
So it's probably like where I can remember it being discussed, but yeah, let's go with a 3 on that as well.
F1 Race, which is actually extremely impressive for a Game Boy game. Like,
yeah, this is definitely something I can recall being covered on Jeremy Parish's Game Boy video series, and it definitely seems like it was, and I do believe I can remember this being advertised a fair bit. Formula One was then, and is still now, quite a big deal in the UK. So you know, it's another one of those that's kind of you know, them trying to just put down as a pillar of the library of, like, we're doing sports games more generally, but also racing games, kind of a particular genre unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is pretty, within its confines, quite well thought of. So we'll go with a 7, but not actually tried it. So bear that in mind.
Dr. Mario, this time on Game Boy, so portable.
Yeah, so I mean, you'd think it's other than the kind of the lack of color, it's kind of a more natural home for Dr. Mario.
If only color were important for Dr. Mario.
Yeah, so that is the problem there. I mean, I guess you got your 4 shades of,
yes, you have 4 shades
to play with. So but the kind of the kind of use case is positive for it, but still, I mean, I've only ever played the version we mentioned earlier. Maybe a 6.
Okay. Balloon Kid.
Yeah, I believe this came up last week, didn't it? In terms of I've been toying with the idea of getting the Game Boy Color version of this, that is on the Japanese Virtual Console, but I have not actually done it because I think this is kind of quite reasonably well regarded for it, this sort of adaptation of the sort of balloon trip element
Yes.
of and taking
Yeah.
that onto Game Boy and all that. So it's more of a projection than it is anything else. But I'll go with the 7 on that.
Okay. And then finally for this year, Nintendo World Cup for the Game Boy.
Yeah, so I guess we're back to Techno Soft, their sort of adaptation of the the what was it, Niketsu, the dodgeball colon soccer, which
Yes.
is a sort of interesting title kind of construct. But yeah, I mean, I think I can remember there was an episode of Retronauts where Ray Barnholt was talking about this, but I can't. This is about the extent of what I've really got to offer on it, but I don't know whether it's necessary that well suited this kind of game. It's more of a console kind of game probably than a portable kind of game, but I'll go with the 6.
Okay. And that is 1991. Let's look at 1992.
This is where the Super Nintendo finally showed
yes.
up.
So we are not going to finish 1992 today. Do you want to just get started, or do you want to call it?
Make a start. Yeah, we'll make a start.
All right. Let's look through the NES. Star Tropics.
Yeah, so famously something that was specific to America, first and foremost, but obviously they brought it over for Europe as well. A late NES game, kind of top down. Certainly, there are people that like this, and then some are not so convinced. I've not got around to playing it, so. Kind of there's still a little bit of a curiosity there, but I really don't have too much to go
It's
on.
very, very racist.
Oh, is it?
It's extremely tribal racist. Like, beyond doubt.
There was a lot of that.
It's very like Witch Doctor. Yeah.
There was a lot of that. I mean, certainly in video games, but I always remember. Was it Major League or the comedy?
Oh yeah.
About the Cleveland baseball team that doesn't have that name anymore.
Yeah.
They're the Guardians. But like they've got a player, from Central America or whatever, and he's got like played by Dennis Haysbert, I think.
Yeah.
And that's like he's got like his voodoo stuff in his
Yeah.
locker or whatever. It's like it was everywhere. It was just like, oh, this is fun. This is goofy.
Yeah, no.
Isn't this zany? That word. Like,
yes.
It's just like captured so much of what everything was trying to do back then. And
yeah. No, Star Tropics, it turns out, does not age well.
Yeah, video games were really in on the video games were constantly trying to be zany.
Yes.
And I think that led them down this trap very often. So yeah, I am intrigued, just to kind of and I don't know how much that part of, again, the fact this was targeted at American primarily.
Yes, it was.
Kind of NES owners. Had played a role in
probably
to some of these sort of this is tropes, but I would still like to try it someday, but it's not like a burning desire. But I think we'll go with a 5.
Okay.
On that one.
NES Open Tournament Golf.
Yeah, so this is interesting because I remember when I think the first time I really got a good look at this is because it was an ambassador game.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
They didn't give out golf, they gave out the improved NES Open Tournament Golf.
Yeah, so that was the thing, because obviously I had golf and, I had my fun with it a bit and stuff, but, it was pretty sort of being like a game from '84, it wasn't that, advanced, and so... and in the years hence, I played many other golf games. I played PGA on the Mega Drive, and so which are much more detailed about real life courses and all this kind of stuff. So when I looked at this on the Ambassador games, it's just it's basically just somewhat fancier NES golf. That's a bit of a kind of uninteresting inclusion, but we actually got around to playing it. It is quite a lot more advanced than
Yeah.
more than I was giving it credit for initially. Like it is, in terms of like you've got like the kind of like you can essentially like make the meter harder, but then shoot further. So it's a bit like the power shot concept that you have in the Camelot Mario Golf
Mm-hmm.
games later, but it's not like a scarce resource the way that was in certainly like N64 and GameCube Mario Golf anyway, and probably their portable equivalents also. But you just had a lot more. You had more content in terms of courses. You had a lot more kind of information about like where you're hit, how you're hitting the ball, the lie, all this kind of stuff. You had the kind of Mario trappings coming in with his bizarre stars and stripes like colored scheme and
Hell yeah.
like Peach and Daisy being in it and all that. So it's actually a pretty good golf game. And over the years, I think I've become more. It's nice as stuff like PGA is like where it's like you get way more information and all this. This actually kind of hits a nice sweet spot in terms of a more arcadey style of
Mm-hmm.
just like playing a golf game that doesn't take forever. It's like you have a number of considerations to weigh up in your shot, but not so many that I'm going to paralyze myself. And just
Exactly.
like not, yeah, so I think this would be an 8.
Okay.
I quite like this.
Yoshi. So this
Yeah,
did
well,
release in Europe after Super Mario World. I triple checked that. This is a
okay.
December 14th, 1992 release in Europe.
So it wasn't just like, oh, it's this dinosaur. You should, follow his career with great interest.
No.
Whatever. No, no. Well, everything I've ever heard about this is that it's bad.
It sure is. Have you not played it?
I think I did. I believe the one and only time that I toyed around with this is that if you remember when Wii U began,
Yes.
it was one of the ones that came out for like 10 cents or
Yes, it.
10p. Or,
Yes, it was.
And I did get it for like, so it was almost free. Oh, but not quite. And I did get, and I think I did play it a little bit, and it seemed pretty like just
Yes.
I didn't see where the hook was.
No, there isn't one. It's
With the,
fucking.
with puzzle games, it's always, especially after they got popular, it's like, okay, what's the hook or what's the spin on a
Yes.
sort of establishment?
As
And I did see it.
as GX points out, Yoshi is Hatris, but somehow worse.
I mean, that certainly sounds appealing, but yeah, I'm not familiar.
No. So.
I think we'll go with the 3 on that one.
Okay. Kabuki Quantum Fighter by HAL.
Yep. So I've heard the name, and I think it's in connection with it. Isn't this like quite a famously complex NES game or
I
something?
believe so.
It's quite advanced, like, and I think it's something that they put quite a lot of their resources into, but then it didn't pay off for them at all, and that is kind of part of the backdrop for how HAL ended up being
Yes.
ended up being essentially a partner of Nintendo.
Well, they were the North American publisher, to be clear. They were not the developer.
Oh, okay.
It was developed by Human Entertainment.
Oh, okay, maybe I'm thinking of something else then.
Which Human Entertainment becomes Spike.
Right.
Or Chunsoft. It becomes Spike Chunsoft. This is Goichi Suda's company. This is Clock Tower, Fire Pro Wrestling, Twilight Syndrome.
Yeah, so it's like I said, the problem is that I'm just trying to remember if this is the HAL game that I was thinking of, or what maybe they did the kind of. I mean, it's all clearly
Yes.
a late game, because even on Famicom it came out after the Super Famicom was out.
Yes, it sure did.
At the end of 1990, so I can only assume it is quite an advanced kind of NES game, and it's got quite a lot, but equally I'm never really seen anything suggest it had tremendous merit as a game, so I'll probably just stick with the 5 on that one.
Okay. The Guardian Legend.
Yep, so this is another one where I've heard I've heard the name, but not really familiar with the substance of the game. But it's so I'll have to just check in with it a little bit. Yeah, the hybrid. So this is the one where you've got the element of like it's an adventure game, but then it's also a shooter. This is one that certainly I've heard people say some warm things about, and it kind of intrigues as someone who likes shoot 'em ups in general, but kind of it's always interesting to see when people try to do something a little different, as we kind of already talked about, like with the alternating scrolling styles. Well, here it's kind of taking that a bit further, where it's got a different style of game to some extent is going on at the same time. So this is more about intrigue than how good I know it to be, but I'm going to go with the 7.
Okay. The first of 3 Mega Man games that NOE published this year, because Mega Man was just not doing it as much in Europe, I would assume. So they just started trying to play catch up, starting with a late release of Mega Man 3.
God, that is. I mean, I had no idea that it was. Yeah, they were so far behind. Because I mean, of course, we all know Mega Man kept going like late.
Yes, but this is 3 coming out after the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that is.
After the European release of the Super Nintendo.
I guess. Yes, exactly. No, I mean, I remember, just when the Super Nintendo came out we'd had our Super Famicom for more than a year.
Yes.
And that time as a child feels like forever. It was almost like, they're finally getting it and all this kind of stuff. But good God, like Mega Man 3 being this, I guess after 2, Capcom must have just decided it wasn't worth their while to do 3 and themselves, and then it was just kind of there for NOE to say, oh well, we could do it, and that's an interesting case, like I said, because I mean I remember long before having the Super Nintendo that Mega Man was something that did get push in the kind of Club Nintendo stuff, so it's not like it didn't exist at all, or so I'm surprised that it was such a kind of thing that Mega Man 3 was just which presumably did very good business elsewhere in the world, was just kind of an afterthought for NOE to kind of pick up. Very good game. I like it very much. Probably not quite as much as 2. I'd go with an 8 on that one.
Okay. Top Players Tennis.
So I guess this is in the lineage of like, let's do a kind of follow-up to we've had like volleyball getting followed up on, we've had soccer getting followed up on, and so now we've got another tennis game. I'm going to assume this is who would have made this is the question, I guess, outside of Europe. Whose game were they kind of?
Top Players Tennis. Would you believe it? That's a bad SEO in modern day. All right. Top Players Tennis was developed by Home Data, and it was published by Asmic Corporation of America. What the fuck did they put out? Virtual Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, well, I guess it was all that kind of sports, but it's that. I mean,
no idea whatsoever.
It's interesting. This kind of thing is something that still went on even in the Super Nintendo era, and not just Europe, because like stuff like games that thought Super Tennis and Super Soccer were both games that Nintendo did not like commission in Japan. They were games made in Japan, and I think Human did Super Soccer. That was Formation Soccer was the series in Japan, and then they kind of did a Super Nintendo version, I think called Super Formation Soccer, but then you have NOA, and then sort of by extension NOE kind of dressed it up as, you know, like Nintendo's soccer on Super Nintendo, and the same Super Tennis was like Tonkin House, and then that became so. This was not something that died with the NES. They still kind of did it for the Super Nintendo, but just here, it's years later, and in this just weird activist phase of NOE getting activist when the system is, you know, in this case, has been superseded
Mm-hmm.
by its successor. It's really, really strange, but you know, I guess it's just maybe they felt, well, enough years have passed that we can sell another tennis game, and this, by virtue of the box art, we could see it's got like Lendl and Eva on it, you know, real
Yep.
players, so that's like a progress, I guess. So, yeah, I can only really give it a 5. I do like good tennis games, but
Okay.
without context, I think it's going to have to be that.
All right. So probably the last game we touch on for today. And I want to
Yeah, that's
know.
all the NES stuff for
Yes.
92. So we hit that.
Yeah. Before we go, I want to know what your thoughts are on F Zero running at 50 hertz.
Fortunately, it's not something I've ever had to experience up close, but you know, like it is one of these things. Like we knew people who had PAL Super NESs eventually, but this was not one of the. I remember, like, I saw Super Mario World all like bordered, and because the thing is, I mean, it wasn't really fair because not only, you know, were we having the, you know, actual 60 hertz and no
Yeah.
borders and all that, but because to be able to get it to run on a TV that you would have in the UK at that time, it was converted for RGB SCART output.
Yeah.
So RGB SCART versus what people would run their PAL Super Nintendos through, which was just generally like RF or
Yep.
composite at best. Like that was probably a lot of the different. Like when I would see Super Mario World, and obviously you'd see it be bordered and slow, but probably that hit me more. It's just the colors looked like shit, and it was. I just thought, oh god, this PAL like so bad, but probably a lot of that wasn't even so much like just being, you know, the PAL version. It was
Yes.
the display, but the cumulative effect was just like, oh my god, I am so lucky. Like
Yes.
I am so grateful to have you know, an older brother who knows what's up and is like really like keyed in on these details, so we can live in the future while everyone else is just like dealing with this shit. Like that's how I felt about it. But yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, slow F-Zero is not something I ever want to
No,
experience.
you. I'm not gonna ask you to rank it today, but your homework is to go to YouTube and type in F Zero 50 hertz.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing, and you know that is going to be an interesting thing, kind of that I haven't really adequately taken into account. I mean, maybe it wasn't such a big deal with the games we've covered, but it's something
Yeah.
I'm going to have to keep in mind more for like the games going forward, because it's like, yeah, you know, like
50
this
hertz
game.
fucks up mode 7.
Yeah, and also like fighting games, it really fucked up
Yeah.
because not just the kind of the, you know, the intensity of it with the speed, but also the timing. So yeah, in some cases in the future, stuff is gonna get, even stuff that I played and I like is going to get marked down.
Because of PAL displays, yes.
Yeah, so look forward to that, children.
Um, so, yes, that's. We'll call it for there. You know, we're gonna. When we come back, we're gonna get shit like F Zero, Mario World, and Link to the Past back to back to back. So, it's gonna be a bunch of bangers, but. And it's gonna be a very good year for Nintendo of Europe, but. What the fuck? 50 hertz.
Yeah, it's. I mean, to be honest though, I think in some ways the tragedy, the irony is that, you know, like Mega Drive was so big and it had all this marketing, certainly in America, but I assume it some of it carried
Yep,
over to here, although there's different rules about how you
of
could market
course.
things. So Nintendo wasn't happening, but Sega was all Sega games and all these arcade conversions, it was so predicated on how fast they were on Mega Drive. But where over here, where Mega Drive was really big, you weren't getting that.
No, I've seen, like, every time I fucking watch Sonic the Hedgehog 50 Hertz, I just have to laugh.
Well, I mean, that is, exactly the sort of irony of ironies, really, is just how much these games that were so predicated on that, they couldn't even really deliver. But it's all relative, I guess, but still.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 2.
A pleasure. I look forward to... next week could be a problem because of the time change, so I don't know whether we might have to have a week off, because... it's basically this time, instead of starting at midnight, it'll be starting at 11, and that might be too early because RFM will be at 1.
Yes.
So it might have to be a week off to let us all get back onto non-daylight savings time, and then convene then.
All right. We will join you in 2 weeks for episode 3 of ranking all the Nintendo of Europe games.
The dawn of Super Nintendo should be good.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.